money than those guys ever made, even adjusted for inflation. And yet, you have guys now, and man, they're all unhappy they're not getting enough dates. And I get it too, because again, this is a generation of people who grew up being fans of wrestling, and they wanted to be like Bret Hart, and, the other guys, I mean, they, I don't know who they want, they wanted to be like Hulk Hogan or before that, like Bruno Sammartino or something, or whatever. It was a different mentality. It wasn't about like wanting to go out there and having great matches. It was just wanting to go out there and make money, So different business, but, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. I mean, I like this version better because the mentality of the performers is such and the schedule is such that, we get way, way better matches. I mean, there's other things about it that the old business created better promo guys because these guys were doing 30 promos a week. And I'm not exaggerating because they were doing localized promos for every show they were doing. So those guys got to be fantastic promos. So if you're into like promos, yeah, this business isn't as good.
Pac.
You heard anything new?
I know as they've just replaced him with John Moxley for Wednesday, but I don't know what that means. I mean, I thought that was going to be a match for down the road. The fact that they're airing it on Wednesday, to me, tells me that there's probably not going to be a title change. I could be wrong, but
yeah, but I mean, this Wednesday thing, again, I don't know what's going on, but it's the perfect opportunity to have Samoa Joe beat Moxley to set up, a TV championship match. Or a pay-per-view championship match.
Well, yeah, but if that happens, the titles change hands.
Yeah, the trios.
It is a titles match.
Yeah, the trios.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with the trios titles changing.
Well, there aren't, but they've been very, very protective of all the belts and the Death Riders. And
you can't do that forever either.
Well, you can't, but
I mean, it's time. If Moxley's going to keep the world title for a while, and then use the trios titles to set up a challenger. Because right now, okay, the big challenger for July is whoever wins that tournament. Okay, we got that. But there's a pay-per-view on May 25th. Now, they may do Blood and Guts or Anarchy in the Arena, and Moxley may be on the Death Riders team and all that, and not actually have a championship match. But there's nothing wrong with putting title matches on TV. They, especially like a Moxley Samoa Joe match as a TV match, would probably do a real good number. And, again, like TV, they actually make more money, way more money off TV than they make off pay-per-view, which is not the argument that they should put all their good matches on TV, but it is an argument that they should put, like, world title matches on TV probably more than they do. So, and that's just a scenario. I mean, there's other things that you can do, but that's kind of like when I was looking at that trios match, it's like perfect opportunity, and even if you don't want to beat Moxley and you have some idea that we just don't want to beat him in a tag, Joe beat Wheeler, win the title, you still can do Moxley and Joe off of that too.
Well, the full lineup for Wednesday, we have got Mercedes and Athena in a semifinal match for the Women's Owen Hart Tournament. We got Will Ospreay and Takeshita in a semifinal match. We have got Hangman versus the Wild Card, which is a quarterfinal match, whoever that ends up being. We have the Death Riders versus the Ops for the Trios titles, with John Moxley replacing Pac. And we have the Hurt Syndicate against the Gates of Agony. Is that a title match?
That's a tag team title match, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why they got that.
That's why they gave the Gates of Agony that win.
I know, but it feels like there should be more than a win.
There should be. Well, they've been getting a bunch of wins on ROH TV too.
That means nothing for those of us that don't watch Ring of Honor.
Well, it means something for those who do. So maybe they want to reward the people who do. Maybe they want to reward the people who really follow it closely. There's nothing wrong with that either.
Dave.
What?
I'm giving the Gates of Agony a tag team title match.
It's a TV match.
And let me tell you something else, Dave.
It's a TV match.
If you want people to care about Ring of Honor, then if something happens on Ring of Honor, we should see footage of it on Dynamite or Collision.
I would agree with that.
We never do.
Well, this is probably also a late thing. Maybe this was something that was supposed to be for for Cage and Archer again. Maybe they were supposed to get a rematch on this show. And sometimes when there's injuries, you got to change, and then you just take what you got at that point. I don't know that this was long-term booking. If it was long-term booking, they should have had 3 or 4 wins on TV and not just one. So my gut is that this was a late change, and they set it up with 1 win because, well, I don't know if they got another big guys tag team out there with Cage and Archer not as a team right now. And, Benjamin and Lashley. I mean, look, nobody thinks that the Gates of Agony are going to win, and they're not going to win, obviously. But maybe he just wants to do a big guys match because, they're going to kill all the small guys. We've already seen that. So just a way to have a TV match that they win. And again, that's all it is. It's a title match for them to win on TV. It's not the main event of the TV show. It's just a match on TV.
The Ryan Nemeth case against CM Punk and AEW is going to arbitration.
Yeah. Well, it has.
We're not going to hear any more about that.
Yeah, it had to because in his contract, in all the contracts he signed with AEW, and all the contracts that these guys have with AEW, they specifically state that if there's any problem, it goes to arbitration in Florida. So, and again, the difference between this and the Janelle Grant case, where, obviously they're trying to get it into arbitration, is the argument that because it's a sex crime involved, that changes the dynamic, because Janelle Grant's contract, or her NDA specified if there's any problems, it goes to arbitration. It cannot be a lawsuit. And so the judge has to make that ruling. With Ryan Nemeth, there's no sex crime, there's no criminal activity or anything like that. It's just whatever it is, his suit is so weird because it's like you claim you're blacklisted, but you're on TV every week in a higher position than you ever were before. This is the highest position this guy has ever been in his career right now after he is blacklisted out of the business, which you can't blacklist anyone in this business anymore because, you know what I'm saying? How can you? WWE and AEW aren't going to work together to blacklist anyone, and TNA is not going to either. So it's like that really didn't even exist before. There were certainly attempts to blacklist people decades ago, but even then it never worked because promoters were always, if you could draw, promoters would just if you were nobody and you would cause trouble, it might be difficult to get work, but even then, you did. Ron Starr, when he was World Junior Heavyweight Champion, he sued the NWA and Leroy McGuirk, who was the promoter of it. It was in all the newspapers. It was an embarrassment because it's like in the newspapers that these titles are fake and he promised him the championship, and he didn't. They had a money figure which wasn't really all that high for a world championship, and it's all out there, and you would go like, oh my God, look at all that terrible publicity Ron Starr brought, the wrestling business, and he continued to work in the business for many, many years. There were places who wouldn't book him because of that, but you could never get everyone to do that, because there was, you just couldn't. There's always a place to go if you have talent. But anyway, like with Brian, it's like, that of course, anyone who's read that lawsuit, it's almost, it's very comedically written. I don't know why he did it that way, but and the gist of it is there is a grievance. In the sense of, they didn't use him because Punk didn't want him used after, he had that confrontation, which Punk brought up, although, Punk was mad about a tweet that he wrote, obviously. And then he came back, and on his first day back, Punk sees him in the dressing room. He goes to the building, and they go, you got to go home. Can't go in the building. We were trying to keep the peace, blah, blah, blah. So, he does have a grievance, but, it's like the idea that he was blacklisted. It's like, yeah, because of what happened, because the top star in the company didn't like him. Yeah, they didn't book him for a couple months. That's true. That is what happened. But it's not, again, you know, it's a lot easier to do that with Ryan Nemeth, given that, he was never a guy who got pushed to begin with. He was just a guy who was an enhancement guy, and Top Star didn't want him. And I mean, that's happened in many, many companies. I'm not saying it's good. I thought it sucked, that anyone would do that, but it happened. It happened with people in WWE too. I always think it sucks when that happens, though. When I just, whatever, especially when it's not. It's one thing if someone's like super unprofessional or something like that. It's another thing with this, which was just, really all the way through just childish behavior. But that happens too.
So Ring of Honor has added a women's pure title.
Yep.
And granted, they can bring people over from AEW, but I did count all of the women in Ring of Honor on their actual roster page. Mm-hmm. And there are 11 women. So we basically have one belt for every 3.6 women.
And 3 championships.
Yeah. One belt for every 3.6 women.
It's ridiculous.
It seems like a lot.
I mean, look, both companies, it's ridiculous the number of belts there are. You know what I mean? It's just, but it's a different era. You know what I mean? It's an era where everyone gets a belt. They all deserve a belt. It means nothing when you get a belt. It doesn't even make you a star when you have a belt. It doesn't even make you a main eventer when you have a belt. You just have a belt, and that goes across everywhere. I mean, it's like New Japan has 1 million belts. CML has 1 million belts. That's just today's wrestling business. It's not just WWE and AEW that have 1 million belts. So, they're adding another one. I guess the idea is that there's a pure men's title, so there should be a pure women's title.